Global Transformation Astrology, GTA, with William Stickevers.
And that brings us to June 15, 2025, with the Yod, the finger of God formation. And this correlates now with what's happening in Los Angeles. If I just take this Yod configuration event, the Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, World Point square alignment, and I overlay it over the Los Angeles City Charter horoscope for September 4th, 1781, we can see that Los Angeles is going through its own Pluto return. We've discussed this with the fires earlier in the year. And I did predict, if you remember, I said, we're going to see more fires. Now, of course, there hasn't been any home fires, but I said, hey, there's going to be plenty more fires happening again around April, May. Now, it happened in June, so there was a bit of a delay. So I was right, but the timing was wrong, right? So we'll give me 50% markup on that. But I said there's going to be more fires. And I said, you didn't see the last of this. There's going to be more and more unraveling. And what we see now, besides this, we see this alignment to Saturn-Neptune right on the moon, the natal moon. And we see Jupiter right on the natal Uranus. We see Mars right on the natal Mercury. All of this indicates big stuff is coming down. Big stuff is going to implode or explode and implode simultaneously. And so what do we see happen today, where Pam Bondi drops Thor's hammer, saying LA rioters face federal robbery charges under the Hobbs Act? So basically what we've seen is Los Angeles Mayor Bass was forced to impose a curfew on downtown Los Angeles, a move that stands in stark contrast to earlier claims from California Democrats that the protesters were mostly peaceful and calm and non-destructive, and the optics for California Democrats, particularly far-left Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and the infamous Governor Gavin Newsom, have taken a turn for the negative. Their characterization of the riots as mostly peaceful is increasingly being contradicted by the viral X footage of looting, vehicle fires, street-level chaos. Public sentiment appears to be shifting, with growing scrutiny on the role of well-funded far-left NGOs involved in organizing the unrest. Meanwhile, a federal judge denied California's request for immediate restraining order that would temporarily prohibit the Trump administration from using the deployment of the Marines and the National Guards in the state. Now, we all knew that was going to happen. But Newsom, in response, calls for rebellion against Trump. California fights MAGA mania. The moment we feared has arrived. So this is all being egged on by Governor Newsom, who thinks he is the shoe-in candidate to beat and defeat Vance in the 2028 election. So he's making his big move, believes we are taking on Trump. Pam Bondi basically said that right now we're the ones keeping California safe, meaning the federal government. If Gavin Newsom won't do it, we will. And everyone who's participating in this, they're going to get locked up. Charges under the Hobbs Act that carries a maximum of 20 years in prison. Yeah, 20 years in prison, federal prison, hard time, right? So this is all very much connected with what we've been talking about. So I'm predicting big things are happening. I think Gavin is going to triple down. I think the NGOs are going to put on pedal to the metal, not only in Los Angeles, they're going to start moving into other cities as well. And I think Trump is going to unleash the Kraken legally in terms of, giving Pam Bondi, the FBI, Homeland Security, the military, National Guard, Marines, right? Everything they need to neutralize this. So this is going to be the showdown. And we have this guy here, the leader of the Democratic Party, or basically the perceived leader. You could see now, this is sort of like, people were talking about, hey, there's going to be a civil war in the United States. And we're going to have a moment where it's going to be triggered, right? And we're going to find out it's Trump versus who. So it's really clear now. It's going to be Gavin Newsom. Will he come out the winner? Will California be the winner, right? Now, what do you think the astrology says? You're going through a Pluto return. You've got all these big alignments hitting your moon, hitting your Uranus, hitting your Mercury. If I had a client like this, what do you think I would tell them? You think I would tell them, hey, put the pedal to the metal, right? The law is on your side. The gods are on your side. The people are on your side. No, right? So this is a form of a existential crisis. Los Angeles, for whatever, like what made Los Angeles is in the process of existential crisis. So it's in a fiscal existential crisis. Hollywood, like most movies are not being made in Hollywood anymore. People are leaving Hollywood. You have producers leaving. They're all moving to Vegas, setting up studios here. So we're looking at the basic economic and social implosion of Los Angeles as it goes through this radical reconfiguration and transformational death rebirth process. So people living in Los Angeles think, oh, it's all Trump, and if it wasn't for him, everything would be great. They do not understand what's really going down. So the other thing that's happening right now is Putin told Trump that so what happened is that NATO coordinated with Zelensky, provided autonomous AI empowered drones to the Ukrainians. And basically, those AI drones that were autonomous, meaning they were intelligent, they knew how to evade all Russian defenses, and they were able to only go after the particular aircraft that they were looking at was the Russian Strategic Air Command, the big bombers, these cruise missile bombers. And basically, about 40 to 50 different drones went to 5 different Russian air bases and destroyed 37% of their cruise missile, basically the strategic nuclear cruise missile bombers, right? $7 billion was destroyed in one swift strike by these drones that cost less than $2,000 a piece. So basically, when people say, hey, AI, I don't believe in it, I don't think it's real, it's here. It's here, folks. The fact that the AI was able to destroy 37%. Could you imagine if America lost 37% of its entire strategic bombers? Its B-52 bombers, its B-1, its B-2 bombers were destroyed by a bunch of drones that you could buy basically at Best Buy, right? You chip it with an autonomous AI chip, then you give a set of instructions to go target an aircraft, and then you put a particular munition on it, right? So that's essentially what happened. So in response, Putin told Trump that he's going to respond to Ukraine's strategic drone strike earlier this month. The likelihood of Ukraine cutting its losses by agreeing to more of Russia's demand for peace is now nil. So basically, it was like this. They were going to meet for peace. Then Zelensky went ahead with this plan days before they were going to meet in Turkey and basically destroy 37% of Russian fleet. Now Putin is really saying, all right, it doesn't matter. I'm going to take what I want. I'm not negotiating anything now. If I want to take the whole country, I will, right? But I'm going to take what I want. I'm going to do what I want. And when I'm ready to negotiate, we will. But until then, right, it's war. Now, talking about war, the other big thing is the U.S. is now on high alert in anticipation of a potential full-scale Israeli strike on Iran. So this is coming directly from U.S. CENTCOM from the Middle East. So it is now at level 2. It's now at level 2. Level 1 is World War III. So it went from level 4 or 5 down to level 2 starting today. The U.S. State Department has ordered all embassies within striking distance of Iranian assets, uranium missiles, including those in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and North Africa, for emergency action committees for evacuation and sending cables back to Washington regarding measures to mitigate risk. So the Associated Press also added that the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad is preparing all non-essential personnel to leave immediately for potential regional unrest. And everybody who's living or staying in, who's American, I'm sure British and everybody else, like, get out of Dodge and get out now. Now, the reason why this is probably more real than not is because Trump was leaving to go to an event. He was stopped, and the press asked, why are U.S. dependents of military personnel being evacuated from the Middle East? And Trump said, he stopped and he just said, you'll have to see, and then got into the car. So when we look at the configuration, that yacht configuration we were talking about earlier, I noticed here, look at that Mars going right over Iran, right? So the probability of a strike, I would say, is now, I would have to look at the prediction markets, but I bet if we look at Polymarket, it's probably around 65%. And looking at the astrology, I would say it's about 70% probability we're going to see a massive strike on Iran, something on a scale we've never seen. So a very big operation may take place for a number of reasons.
To watch the full presentation and more like this on geopolitics, the economy, and world events from an archetypal and mundane astrological perspective, join the Global Transformation Astrology membership. Go to gta.williamstickevers.com. Become a GTA member today.